Right? Did you guys come to like an agreement as far as the argument of God existence or something like that?
Oh, we both already agreed. We were just waiting for someone to come up to disagree.
So what was the conclusion? I'm sorry, I'm late. What was the conclusion that you guys came to?
Well, my conclusion is that I don't know. That's why I want to see if there's like a good argument for it because I just don't know if it's true or not.
Right. My thing with that, the whole trying to, I guess when you have that type of conversation, all you end up doing is trying to disprove the existence of God. I feel like
Well,
because
if you have an argument and you want to make sure that the argument is correct, like of course you're going to critique it. And if it stands up to the criticism, then it would establish its conclusion, right?
right.
Yeah. So
So
of course I would critique it. Yeah.
yeah, but the thing about with the concept of God, the thing about the actual conversation when you're talking about God, it's like okay, you can critique it as many times as you want, but you're not going to be able to disprove that God exists. You
Oh,
understand what I'm
I'm not
saying?
trying to yeah, I'm not trying to disprove that God exists.
Right. So that in itself to me proves that God exists. If
Wait,
you
how
you
does that
understand what I'm
prove God exists? Wait, so your argument is um if you cannot disprove that God exists, therefore God exists. You can't
right.
disprove that God exists, therefore God exists. But I could just construct a parallel argument that if you can't um, disprove that God doesn't exist, right, then God doesn't exist. And then you can't disprove that God doesn't exist, so God doesn't exist. Like, that's just a parallel argument. It uses the same inference rules, but it has an opposite conclusion. So, like, it would just seem like this isn't a good argument.
Well, yeah, somewhat, but for some reason you made me think about the CERN experiment. Have you ever noticed what they noticed with the the particles when they're being observed and how they behave differently or whatnot? So
Um,
when
yeah,
so with
the double slit experiment is what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So something like that, because basically when we're trying to disprove God, it's like okay, when we're looking to find out if there is God or not, it's like humans with our limited consciousness, as far as in my opinion,
Yeah,
trying to explain or what I mean, be able to
I
quantify or
yeah.
we like everything is not going to be intelligible. You know what I mean? On this,
Well, I'm not sure what the argument is here.
so
Yeah, go
so what I'm
ahead.
so what I'm saying basically is that it's kind of not our place to try to figure out if God exists or not, because there is no way for us to even understand that type of information. It's not. It's just like I was watching something on YouTube the other day, and people were trying to find out. Okay, well, how did God create Earth? How did God create us? How do we, as the creation, figure out what the Creator did? And then,
So if we don't if we're not supposed to like figure out if God exists or not, then would you say that like I should believe in him?
yeah,
So
because
why should I have a belief in something if I have no reason to think it exists? Because an argument would give me like a reason to think he exists, right?
right. The thing about it is there's no. So from my personal opinion, I believe in God, of course, for spiritual reasons or whatnot. But from a scientific standpoint, there's no other way to explain, you know, things like how protons behave
Well,
under
okay,
observation or
let's talk
dark
about
matter
that
or
claim then. Let's talk about that claim then. So like apart from God, there's no way to explain why the protons in dark matter act the way they do. So like what's the argument for that claim that there's no way that it could be explained apart from God?
so when we get into that, then it's only speculation because literally the scientists couldn't even see and observe.
That.
So just the fact that we cannot explain what's happening here, and we have no
So
way to go
so
ahead.
the inference here is if we can't explain something or we don't know some fact about something, therefore there's a higher intelligence that's hiding it from us.
If there's no way possible for us to fathom or even in the future see that we can, you understand what I'm saying? There's no way for us to
I understand
observe.
what you're saying, but it's just a wildly implausible premise. I don't see why I would accept that just because I don't know something, that therefore there's some higher power hiding it from me.
I mean, I guess I don't know but how else do you explain something like that? How else do you explain the unknown unknowns, and why do they exist?
There could be like a number of different explanations, but I'm interested in like if you're saying that the only explanation for that is God and there could be no other possible explanation for that, then like that's what there would need to be an argument to show that that's true.
Right. Yeah. I just feel like I'm be honest, there's kind of like, so I'm a speculative person just like, everybody else. And there's kind of a foundation or kind of I'm sorry, my background. It's kind of like it's a comforting, and it's kind of, yeah, it's grounding for you to say, okay, instead of just going on and on trying to explain away everything, no, God created everything. And that's why everything makes sense, because God is a perfect creator. That's why you can mathematically break down everything that he allows you to, but certain things that he doesn't want you to deal with,
Can I interject
you
here?
can't. Absolutely.
There's so many. I just want to point out that there's like a lot of like Hindu gods, and what are you saying that there's only one God?
Right. There's a creator God. Right.
But
Right.
what
There's
about
the
the
one
creator?
creator God.
So when people say that there's multiple gods that created multiple things, what would you say to that? That they're just wrong?
No. So that goes, I would have to know all of the history amongst those, like, because different cultures have different gods. And so my understanding of why people, or why older cultures interpret different beings as their gods, some of them have become
What is
disambiguations, like Buddha. Like Buddha was not, Buddha was not considered like an actual god. Buddha was a human.
Yeah, but what does
But then,
culture have anything to do with gods?
no, I'm saying, because so different cultures have different gods,
Yeah,
basically.
but well, no, I don't know if that. Like, I guess so. There,
So I have a
certain
question
Like
cultures.
different.
for Jay. So when you were saying that like okay, there's like all these different processes that all go on simultaneously, these mathematical models that predict the way the universe works, and these things that are like unexplained, and that to you it seems like the most logical thing or the thing that you would prefer to do is to simplify the theory, right? And say that God created all of this and that this is like
Right.
and that this just neatly explains everything, right? And it's like a simpler theory. Is that the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. But after,
So,
this is coming
okay.
from someone that did go through the whole changing religions, agnostic, atheist, and just realizing that, wait a minute, I'm not the highest intelligence, and we are all connected. So when you go to the when you become, say you become like a spiritual person, you start. I feel like a lot of people are going through this awakening type of thing. I'm not, maybe I'm inflecting, but when you get into that one consciousness is
That are in the world, that I'm just going to say that that's simply not true because I can actually just propose another theory that explains all the phenomena in the universe, but just posits that there's like a necessary initial state of the universe. So it's just like all the same things as your theory, except for it's just instead of God, it's just the necessary state of the universe. So I'm just positing like one less thing. So now it's actually simpler, and then it would just everything would be explained from coming from the initial state. So it would just explain the same amount of things, but it would have one less entity. So it would be a simpler theory.
I mean, you can explain away everything after the creation happened. That's our problem. You can
Well, that's the
explain
same
away
thing you're
everything
doing,
except
because you didn't create this theory before you were created. Like you adopted this theory afterwards when you were already a person. So we're both on the
right,
same
this
footing
theory.
there.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So I mean, but that reinforces my theory. It's like you can explain away. You can do all. Of course, I'm not a I haven't done like you know, as much research as I could have, but I've done years of research and being super skeptical and realizing that yes, you can explain away almost everything within the creation, though. After the creation is incepted, or after the inception of the creation, which you want to call the Big Bang, or just Adam and Eve, or whatever you want it to be. You can explain away everything after that, but you cannot explain how that happened, and you cannot
Well, no,
fathom
I
the
can. I
creator.
can.
You know what I
Because
mean?
I can.
So
No, I can actually. I can explain how that happened because I defined it as just a necessary thing. So that means that it could not have failed to be. So if there's no possible world where something can fail to be, then that's just going to be its explanation. It's just explained in virtue of the fact that it couldn't have failed to be. This is the same type of like um, necessity that you would appeal to say that God doesn't need an explanation because he's necessary. There couldn't fail to be God. It's just in all possible worlds there's God. So all I'm doing is explaining this initial
right,
state in the same way. So I don't need to say like what's the explanation for this initial state.
okay. So I
So he's
understand what you're
just
saying. Basically, with your theory, basically God has to exist just because there's no reason for God not to exist.
Well, I'm saying that would be true in your theory, but in my theory, that's true of the initial state of the universe, not God.
Same thing, basically, because
Yeah,
there's
except for
so you
there wouldn't be like a person. It's not like personal or has agency or anything like that.
so but does it have intelligence? That's the thing.
No, no.
So there's no intelligence. Everything is just randomly aligned somehow.
I don't think that in no intelligence entails randomness. There could be some things that are random, but there could be some things that are just like deterministically connected. So this causes this.
Right.
let,
And
let me play some messages here and then we'll get back.
yeah, my bad.
What's up, Flo? How's it going? Good afternoon. How's it going? How's it going, Michael, Jay, Max? How's it going, guys? Shout out to the audience. Hope you're all doing very well today. I'm here to listen to this talk. What's the argument for God's existence? This is a good question. I have no idea. Maybe the inevitable evolution of technology. I have to assume that if we're going on a technological path where we're creating AI, we already have augmented reality. In fact, we're augmenting our reality every single day, you know? So if we get to that point and we actually create actual artificial intelligence, which we have not done yet, but when we get there, not if, but when we do, I have to assume that any other civilization out there would be considered gods to us, and technology will be, you won't be able to discern between magic and technology because it look exactly the same to us. So there you go. Anyways, I'm here listening.
I I think that we're just defining God as like a creator of the universe, not as like a super advanced alien race.
Here, let me play
That's what
another.
God is, though.
I didn't know you guys were talking about just like straight up one omnipotent being, so my apologies for that. I thought you meant like something we can perceive as gods, like scientists or engineers, you know, ancient alien theory, but not really ridiculous like that. Like just, you know, it's just like the cosmos is vast. It's so vast, it's not even funny. So I have to assume that, you know, even scientifically speaking, the odds of there being life out there, you know, it's there. So that's what I'm talking about. Also, what about Fibonacci sequence? Fibonacci is found in a lot of things. Seashells. Just nature in general. So did we discover math or did we invent it? I don't know, but these are all good questions. Guys, I'm here listening. So yeah, I'm just here listening. Sorry to ramble so much. I have so much to say, but I'm just gonna shut up and listen.
One more comment from Blues, and we'll be done.
I think what Jay is saying is that he can't explain it, but he's operating on faith, recognizing that unless you also have that faith, you're not going to be able to explain anything either. And if that's not the case, then try and explain how all things can be and cannot be, and not reference God.
Well, okay, so BX Blues, I want to address what you said quick. So if the claim is that nobody can explain this without God, then it's going to be up to the person making that claim to demonstrate it. It could be that I actually can't, with my worldview, explain that, but it's not going to follow that because I couldn't explain that under my worldview, that therefore nobody who has a worldview without God can explain it. That doesn't get you any closer. Like, just demonstrating that my worldview doesn't do the job wouldn't get you closer to demonstrating that any worldview without God doesn't explain these things. You'd have to provide an argument for that.
It's true. It's true. It's true. I mean, I feel like if if you were living within a creation, you're not going to understand the inner makings or the outer makings of what's actually going on. If you are imagine being a freaking germ living inside of a snow globe. It's probably a crazy analogy, but you're not going to know how the snow globe was created. You're not going to, let alone how where the glass came from and how all the work that went into that glass being created. You're not going to know anything. You're not going to be able to fathom that, but you're able to fathom, okay, how to live and survive as a germ. The same thing as the animals that live on Earth. The only problem with us humans is we got this extra inclining to try to explain away things. It's a gift and a curse because, yes, it helps us to be, ingenuitive or whatnot. It helps us to create things and, live better. But at the same time, it makes us do things like this, which is kind of question God, basically, literally question God and
No, I
God's
guess,
creation. Yeah.
yeah, I guess I would just need the argument that gets you from there are things like in the universe that we don't know or that we don't know how they work, and then gets you from there to therefore God exists. Like, that gets you from that claim to the second claim. I need some argument to establish that. But
Yeah.
actually, Flo, I
It's
saw BX sent another message in. If you wanna, I'm curious what he has to say.
mhm.
No, that's actually a cop out. I already have a worldview. If I have a worldview, it says that I believe that this all comes, my proof is that the revelation that God has given in his scriptures. That's my claim, right? So if you say that you're gonna explain how these things happen, then you have to present your worldview to compare to my worldview. I laid out my cards. Now you have to lay out your cards.
Yeah, okay. So this is just the classic precept script, right? It's saying if you claim that you can account for all these things in your worldview, then lay your worldview out. But I never claimed this. The claim that was made by BX Blues is that without God, there is no worldview that can account for these things. And showing that my worldview doesn't do that job doesn't actually get you any closer to demonstrating that all worldviews without God can't explain these things. That's what there has to be an argument for. You can't just shift the burden of proof, right? If you're making the claim that no worldview that lacks God in it can account for these things, then it's on you to show that somehow. And no presupper can do this.
Yeah, because there's multiple explanations, right? That even though you can't say them all, right? There's going to be multiple explanations. It doesn't mean that all of those explanations aren't accounted for.
Yeah, he's sending in more messages, or he's sending another one.
Yeah. Oh no, that was talk. Let me finish this.
Just because you don't want to take my claim, just because you don't want to believe in what I'm saying, doesn't mean that I don't have to accept my worldview as, or what I believe as evidence, or rather, my own personal claim. And so you have your claim, and if I ask you the same thing, how can you explain anything without God? Then it's just up to you to do just that. Try to explain something without referencing God.
Well, no, because I didn't ask you, right? Can you explain everything with God? That's not what I asked. The claim that you made, BX, is you made the claim without God. No, nothing can be explained, right? That's the claim that you made, is that you can't explain everything without God. So that's what you would need to establish, is that it's a universally quantified statement for all worldviews, with not God, these things can't be explained, and that's what you have to establish. You could just prove that my worldview can explain these things. You could do that, and that wouldn't get you any closer to proving the claim that you laid out, that for all worldviews that don't have God, that they can't explain these things. Doesn't get you any closer. Anyways,
Yeah.
if I'm if I keep going with this with him, I'm gonna be up here like all night, and I need to get to my homework. But
Hey, what's the whole thing with the double slit experiment? Like, you talked about it briefly, about how particles that are being observed behave a certain way. Like, what's that to say? Like, is that to say that somehow there is like an observer and something that's being observed like infinitely?
Right.
So now we're just trying to observe the observer, or like, what are we trying to get at with that?
Right. So with the double slit experiment, they were using the I think it's called the CERN Large Hadron Collider or something. It's over in Europe somewhere. But what they do is they shoot particles around a loop. It's like a mile long loop. And what they can do is what they actually trying to do is they're trying to create a black hole is what I hear. But what they have done is this double slit experiment is when they shoot these particles through a filter, they can put a different pattern in the filter, and they want to see if that particle is going to basically show the pattern that the filter has on it when it comes through. And what they've found is that that particle will do whatever it wants to do, basically. So when they're watching it, the particle will shoot through, and it'll basically mimic whatever the filter. It'll do what you expect it to do when you're watching it. But they found out by accident. I guess they let the machine run or whatnot, and they came back and it was recording what it was doing when they left. So when they left, they shown that the particle would do what you expected to do and totally different. And I'm saying that to say that that shows that, okay, literally those scientists were saying, okay, that particle is displaying signs of intelligence. So where does that intelligence come from? And we've been coming to the conclusion that, okay, we all have the same intelligence. The earth is all one frequency. Well, we're all on the same frequency. We're all the same creation. So I believe that that's all the same intelligence that we have, that God has. If you talk about
do, but
It's supernatural. lap. That's not what I'm trying to do here. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present my worldview, which is not only a claim, but it's my faith and it's my worldview. That's what I have. That's what's out in the open. So you put up a title that says, "What's the argument for God's existence?" I basically answered it. I said that without God, nothing can be explained or grounded. And so, what is your response to that? That's what we'd all like to know.
Oh yeah, the response to that is, what is the argument for that claim that nothing can be explained without God, right? What's the argument for that claim? That's the response to that. And you showing that, again, you showing that my worldview can't explain everything, that no worldview without God can explain everything. It just won't get you there. You have to have an argument that can get you there. What's the
Yeah,
next
but he
message?
didn't give any. He didn't give any premises, right? Like he just
Yeah, he just made a
any
claim.
reasons. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, trying
Yeah,
in the
I'm not
court.
trying to find out if it. I'm not trying to that no worldview without God can account for anything or ground anything. Like that's not going to do it unless there's some justification for that claim.
Yeah, we're lightly walking around just the fact that, okay, yeah, you can't explain life without God, but at the same time, of course, we know that we have a whole bunch of supporting documentation saying, okay, yes, God created the earth, the one God,
Well,
God created
you
the universe.
you'd have to send me that supporting documentation. I've never seen it.
So can I?
I'm talking about
I'm
those good
sorry.
old books,
Hello,
that they find.
hello,
Oh, well, oh, we
hello.
we
Can you guys hear
can.
me?
I,
Yeah. We if you want to send us the evidence, I mean, it's kind of late. We were trying to ask for like the argument, and
we
um,
we can
it's like
go
an
over
hour.
like whatever evidence you have if you want to, like, because I do need to do homework, but if you want to send it to me and then I can read it over and we can like hop in a room like in another day and discuss it if you want.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's cool. I respect that. You
Okay.
gotta do your homework.
Do you want to play that last message by BX before I leave?
Yeah. Which? Oh, this one.
See, that's you're saying that you're not trying to find out if there's a God, but you're asking what's the best argument for God's existence.
Yeah, no, I
Okay?
am trying to find out
So
if it is.
if I'm telling you that the scriptures declare everything that explains everything around us, that is the answer. Your question has been answered. Whether you want to accept it, that's something totally, entirely different.
Well, no,
He's like,
the question was what's the argument? None of that was an argument. So I don't see how the question's been answered.
So I
yeah.
do have a question here for Flo and Michael. Hi,
Yeah.
this is Max.
Hey.
I've been listening for a while, and of course, I've been in the room for a few. And I know you got to go, Michael. So feel free to drop out whenever you want. But my question is for anybody asking for proof of something, anything, whether a car
Hmm.
exists. My
Yeah.
question is, what kind of proof would satisfy you?
Oh, definitely. So I can answer that question. So I think I would accept either a deductive argument whose conclusion was God exists or an inductive argument whose conclusion was God probably exists. Like I would accept either one of those.
Okay. So by deductive argument, you mean that showing you certain things about the universe that
Well,
cannot be explained without something,
yeah,
right?
that's
Okay.
not going to establish God exists. By deductive argument, I
Okay.
mean like a set of premises and a conclusion that's like logically valid, where like I would take the premises to be true. So just like a sound argument. That's all that I mean by like a deductive argument. So like some set of premises with the conclusion God exists.
Give me a deductive argument in your opinion. Give me a deductive argument for a tree's existence.
A
That
deductive
you
argument
that
for
a tree that you've never seen. There's a tree in Amazon that I visited last year that I saw. How could I prove to you that that tree exists? You've never been there.
Um, so when you ask me for a deductive argument for a specific thing, it becomes a little bit harder. But there's like a number of ways you could do it. You could be like, so if so, you could say something like,
Well, hang on, hang on.
if
I'm
the
sorry.
oh
Let me
yeah,
let me make it easier for you. Your parents, your mom,
I
your
could use
dad.
I could just give you
I
an
I've
example of a
never met.
deductive argument that God exists or that there's like a cause of the universe. Like I could just give you an example like that.
Go ahead,
So
please.
have you ever heard of like the Kalam argument? So it's every premise one, everything that begins to exist has a cause. Premise two, the universe began to exist. Conclusion, the universe has a cause. So like this argument, I take issue with some of the premises, but its form is valid and its conclusion is that the universe had a cause. So like that would be an example of one.
But that's what all theists say. All theists already say this, and atheists do not accept it. So do
Well,
you
right,
accept that
but
argument?
but the what I'm saying is the reason I don't accept it's not because the form is invalid. The form is valid, but I just would disagree with one or both of the premises. So all I'm saying is a similar argument to this, where the form is valid, but to where there's like premises that I agree with, then that sort of proof would be sufficient for me to say yes, like God exists.
Right. So that is the argument. That is the argument that
Yeah.
all
Okay. So
theists
yeah,
already
I
put forth.
disagree.
You've
Yeah.
already heard. Yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I
Sorry.
disagree with premise. I disagree with premise one, though, that everything that begins to exist has a cause. I don't see any reason why I would take that premise over a premise that says something like everything that begins to exist has a material cause, right? The
So
universe began to exist, therefore the universe has. So classical theism is false. Like I could construct a parity argument that has a
so
different premise, and I don't know why I would accept the premise of the Kalam over the premise of like that parity argument.
okay. So in that case, let me ask you the opposite. As an atheist, do you believe or can you prove
Oh, I'm not an
something that,
atheist.
or whatever you are? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply. Do you have an example of something that began to exist without a cause?
So I don't need like an example in order to contest the claim that everything that began to exist would have a cause, right? I wouldn't need to show an example because it's just on the person making the argument to justify the claim. Usually it's justified by like intuition, but I could just give like a similar premise that's just as intuitively justified. I could ask you the same question in the parity argument. Have you ever seen something that began to exist that didn't have a material cause? Have you ever seen such a thing?
I'm not
Right.
claiming that. I'm not claiming that. I'm
Well,
not
yeah, and
claiming.
I'm not claiming the first premise of like the Kalam. I'm not claiming that.
No, no, no.
You just
It, no, I think you're slightly evading the. Let me simplify what I mean, and maybe you can. What I mean to say, and I think what Jay has been trying to say for a while, and I think what BX Blues, we're all people of God in some manner. I mean, we may believe in
Well,
different religions,
B,
etc., but
B,
we believe in a God.
BX Blues sounds like a presuppositionalist. I wouldn't characterize either of you or Jay that way.
Well, what I was trying to say was that I'm on the side of the people that believe in God, and I think
Yeah.
BX Blues is there, Jay's there. Now, what doctrine, what book, and all that can be debated in a different manner. But what I mean to say is that as a believer in God, the premise that I'm making, which is the one that you mentioned earlier, the
Hmm.
deductive one, which is that all things must have all created things must
Well,
have a first
all
a
things
cause.
that begin to exist, right?
Oh, so when I say created, I suppose you can say it in three more words: begin to exist.
Well,
I'm using one
I think
word: created.
created presupposes a creator. So I just don't like if you use that language, then I'd be giving up the conclusion.
You're saying, okay, all right. So what I'm trying to simplify this down to is all things that, I'll use your terminology, that began to exist must have a cause. We
Right.
believe that that cause was God. You can call
Hmm.
it whatever. Some people, I think, some atheists fall on the side of nature, like nature does this. Okay, fine. You want to call it nature, that's fine. I call nature
Yeah.
God. That's God, right? Because
Yeah.
nature, all the, so the question is, For somebody to reject that, I would think that in order to logically reject that, you would need to come up with an argument to show how some one thing, anything out there, began to be existing without a cause.
Well, I don't see that I would have to do this any more than if I make the argument to you that everything that begins to exist has a material cause, that if you want to disagree with that, then you would have to show an example. Like, I don't think that because I'm the one making the argument that you would have to show an example of something that exists with a material cause. And when you're making the argument to me that everything that begins to exist has a cause, I don't see why I would have to show that there's something that doesn't.
Okay, so again, that's why I was using a more localized example, such as, you know, your parents or your bike or your car, which I've never seen any of these things before. You
Mm-hmm.
can claim that they exist, and I can forever claim against that. And there's no way for
Yeah,
me to prove that until I walk over to your house, right?
right. But it's up to the
But
person
in
trying to convince
conversation,
you who's making the
right,
argument to show that that bike exists.
right. But there's no way. Okay, how would you be able to do that in a discussion without actual evidence? So what we say on the theist side is the evidence is pretty substantial. I mean, we have an overabundance of evidence, not just in mankind and Earth, but we have evidence in terms of the universe. We have evidence in terms of the actual laws of nature that cannot be altered by mankind, but they appear to be following a particular law put in place by somebody or something, whatever it was.
Well, I have a question. So when you say that like the existence of these laws suggests that there was that like that the nature of those laws is such that it suggests that these were put in place by somebody. Um, when you claim that, I guess under your worldview, everything exists such that it was created by God, right? Like there's nothing that exists that was not created by God. So my
Of
question is
course,
just
yeah.
how do you differentiate? How do you determine that these laws are such that they seem to be created by a God? What are you comparing them to that's not created by a God in order to make that determination?
But okay, as theists, a theist is not claiming that there's anything other than a God.
Right.
So
But then if you want to
the
tell
question
me,
is,
yeah,
the
yeah,
question
I'm just
is the question is nonsensical to a theist, right? You can't pose to a theist that, hey, like earlier I think I heard, and this is something that atheists or non-believers or agnostics do quite a bit to theists, which is, hey, how do you know your God is right? Why can't Rama be the God? Like, you know, those are examples of, those are questions that if you want to get into the debate of the text and the mythology and where it was inaccurate and all those things, but you can't say how can you prove your God if you're just not even believing in a God, any God, right?
Well, the criticism I was making is that if you're saying that like I should take the existence of these natural laws as evidence that a God exists because these things suggest that they were created, like by their very nature, they suggest that they are created. I don't know how I would determine that they seem to be created. If under your view everything was created, in order to say that something is such that it suggests it was created, seems like we'd have to compare it against things that aren't created. Like, how do we tell what things are and aren't created if everything is supposed to be created?
There's no, so again, in terms of God and, for example, miracles or angels or those things that theists believe in, there is no falsification test. Falsification tests are for those things that are not faith-based, right?
Well, I'm not
Faith-based
asking for
things.
falsification. That's not
Well, that
exactly what
is
I'm asking.
no, but that is your question. Like,
No.
how can I show you something not created by my God or a
Well,
God
well, yeah,
in
no,
order
I'm
for
not.
you? Well, you just
That's
said
not what
this.
I'm asking. I'm not asking you to show me
You
something
just
that
said,
wasn't created. I'm asking how can I determine something was created? How can I determine that something is evidence for it being created or that it shows evidence of
right.
intelligent design if I don't have anything to compare it against? That's according to you, there wouldn't be anything that I could compare it
Oh, okay.
against.
Okay, well, I suppose I can give you an example. For example, um,
Right.
Nonsensical, because in the example I'm giving, and I admit it's nonsensical, because even the things created by mankind, as a God believing person, you're using the things that I believe that God already, right?
No.
God
Yeah,
already
I get you. I
created
get
the
you. But
materials to make a ruler. So there's no way for me. Again, you're asking for something that is nonsensical, because
I don't think.
the
Well,
fact that
I'm just trying to say why your claim there is kind of nonsensical to me. Why I can't make sense of it. Because when I talk about, like, I agree with you that for things that humans create, um, that if I was to like walk through the forest and I find like a log that is carved in the shape of a chair, I'm going to be justified making the inference that this was created by a human. I think you would agree with me there, right?
absolutely,
Um,
yes.
so, but I would say that the reason that I'm able to make this inference is because I'm drawing on past data of things that I've seen that both are and are not created by humans. I've seen a lot of things that are not created by humans, and I've seen a lot of things that are created by humans. So I'm able to use that past experience to make a determination that something is probably created by a human, that chair in the forest. But if it's like a natural law or something that God created, and under your view, everything was created by God, I don't actually have this past experiences of seeing things that both were and were not created by God to be able to make a determination that something suggests it was created by God. That's the point I'm trying to make.
I completely get your point. I completely understand it. My response to that is that in order to accept a creator, you don't need to see what he didn't make. I already see what he made, and the things he made are so incredibly amazing
Right,
that
but
there has to be
and
something.
yeah, but that's why, like,
Yeah,
unless I
yeah.
already buy into your worldview, those things just aren't going to be evidence.
And that's totally fine. That's fine. You can reject all of it. What I'm saying is, the reason that those of us that do believe in God, the reason we believe in God is it's a fewfold. Number one, we have a more personal level. There's like a religion and a book and these things that we interact with in people. So that's different. But the at least for me, the biggest reason is that the universe itself and the laws of the universe themselves, it's very difficult for me to find an answer, a logical answer, for how those things could have come to be all by themselves. That's all.
Mm,
If you
okay.
think they could have come to be all by themselves, then that's fine. And I would love for a theist one day to try to prove that to me. Like, hey, this thing happened by itself.
Well,
Do you know what I mean?
look, yeah, I get what you mean. But I think that we've like reached a good place to like end it. If you agree with
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, yeah,
like that I
yeah,
can, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for so late
yeah,
and asking
for
me.
sure.
But thank you for engaging. Thank you. I'm
Yeah,
still here if the other guys want to talk, but thank you.
yeah, for
Thank
sure.
you.
And hopefully, you seem like a pretty reasonable guy to talk to. So hopefully, we'll hop in some lives together another time.
Sounds good. Thank you. I look forward